Today, I am joined by special guests, Siri Rishi Kaur, Kundalini High Priestess, feminine-led entrepreneur, and master teacher. Welcome to Radiant Genius Podcast. I'm Elsa Mehary, a creative strategist and feminine entrepreneur. Join me and the occasional guest where we will illuminate the path to brilliance in wellness, tech, and business trends. I will be guiding you through the journey of your inner genius to transform you into your most brilliant and badass self. Give yourself permission to live out loud at the brightest level. Welcome to Radiant Genius Podcast. I'm Elsa Mehary, creative strategist and entrepreneur. Today, I am joined by special guests, Siri Rishi Kaur, Kundalini High Priestess, feminine-led entrepreneur, and master teacher. And she is innovating the wellness space. So excited to have you. It's going to be a great combo. And we have talked about this for so long, and we are finally here. And it's going to be a great conversation. So, how are you doing?
First, I want to say thank you so much, Elsa, for inviting me on. And it's such an honor to witness this blossoming of your podcast and to be your first guest. I'm so honored. I'm so grateful. And I'm so excited. And how am I? Well, in this very moment, I'm just in bliss, just witnessing you and knowing that we're doing this. And it just feels so good. It feels so like a huge milestone that I'm watching you jump over a beautiful hurdle and move through all that you moved through to get this podcast up. So I'm excited about it. And outside of how am I in this moment, wow, it's just been a wild ride this last, I want to say, 7 days. Just all kinds of marathons, nervous breakdowns.
The life of an entrepreneur. And you have a family. So you have a family that you are.
Well, I was thinking the life of an entrepreneur through the lens of the divine feminine, which is very different than what we're used to. It's funny, I have my granddaughter this week because it's my daughter's birthday and she wanted to go to Jamaica. And this has been planned for like 9 months. And it just for some reason seems like this week is the week where like so many things needed to happen. But I literally had to put all these important things on pause because in my planning, I forgot what it's like to have a full-time child. I completely forgot and like overplanned, overextended, thought that I could handle this, that, and the other. And now I'm sitting in the seat of like, girl, just surrender. Just freaking surrender. You can only get this little girl ready for school, take her to school, maybe have a moment in between that moment and like go and pick her up on time. Make sure she gets to school on time and make sure you pick her up on time. And like outside of that, there's not much else I can do. A post here, a check-in there, a phone call there, like everything else has been dropped. And the amount of nervous breakdowns I've had this week has been, I was walking today and I finally had, I think the last one because my daughter comes home tonight. And I was like, I wonder if I had to be put in this position so I could feel what she's feeling. And what she's going through.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I was like, is this what her emotional body is feeling all the time? Is this what her nervous system is moving through? And I was like, wow. It just made me feel even more strongly, like say one of my secret pillars of inspiration and missions in my life is that mothers need to be supported more.
Yes.
And I feel if there was an embedded consciousness around mothering in our collective consciousness, that our society would look very different. Children would grow differently. Adults would grow differently. And that's another thing. This week, I've been saying, we're not raising children, we're raising humans.
Yes.
Like we need to stop this with the wrong semantics. We're raising humans. And if we looked at life that way, what would that look like? How would we approach it differently? How would we treat each other differently if we were like, wow, you're in the business of raising humans as a mother?
I want to talk about the support aspect. I think that is really significant. And I don't have children. And it's this lifetime I've chosen to explore levels of freedom, can travel. I do have a pet, which keeps me a little bit restrained, but society is set up in a way that capitalism touches every aspect, and every human is expected to perform at a very high level consistently. In the United States, right? Europe, there's built-in nanny systems, or the grandma is living at home with you in the household. Just so many things are different collectively. And I think that's going to be shifting. That's one of the things I think women are going to be demanding this as we come into this feminine-led experience where it's like, I'm not going to be the man, the woman, and the machine. I cannot do all things. We understand, like, my grandmother was able to pick me up from school every day. There was a lunch waiting for me. I didn't know anything else while my mom had to work. She was a single mom. And when she was finished, she picked me up. But she knew I was safe with the grandparents. And then my grandfather worked outside of the home. And my grandmother, she had her own business. She was a tailor, which is how I'm so fashionable, because I was at the knee and I just like picked everything up. And she taught me crochet and sewing, and she always had a Vogue, and largely responsible for my career choices, I have to say. I was heavily influenced by my grandma, but that made such a huge difference. And I always felt supported, and I always had someone there. And that is a privilege for a lot of folks. And you're providing that service for your daughter. You're in the way that you're capable right now of being there for her while she's elevating and continuing and running her business and growing, right, for your granddaughter. It's really something that has to shift, I think, in our society. And I think as more women respond to the imbalance and point it out, like, you've had to put your whole business on hold this week, but you have a choice. And so a lot of people don't have that choice, and then they're not able to do both.
Well, what's interesting about it all is I've been thinking about all of this because I'm here. And one thing I was thinking about is life is business. Your whole life is a business, really and truly. Like, how you conduct yourself and how you set yourself up is your business, right? Number one. Number two, yes, I have the privilege, thank God, that I work for myself, that I could say to my daughter, sure, I can take Niall on for a whole week. Number three, I feel that what this has shown me is how important the support piece is for my daughter and my granddaughter on that level of, like, when I think about you just now, you just said something so important, and that is your grandmother picked you up every day from school and lunch was waiting for you. Do you know how much security that is?
Yeah.
Do you know how secure that makes a child's life to know it's not the mother, it's not the father, she has an actual third person that is there for her? That's immense.
And I don't have an eating disorder. I don't associate food with anything outside of nourishment. I mean, I have a little sugar addiction, but people who they don't get food, or food is punishment, or food is reward, that's a whole other thing. And that's just because someone was working and weren't available. Or, I mean, there's so many, that's a whole level of conversation of when there's imbalance and the nurturing is not, you can't manifest it in the way, because really we're forced to be like men. We're forced to be on masculine schedules. We're forced to work more hours. We're forced to sleep less. We're forced to wake up at 5 a.m. on a man's schedule. There was a lot of this. I can't remember the men responsible, but a lot of these exercise things where watch your life change if you start waking up at 5 a.m. And I mean, if you wake up at 5 a.m., it's probably because you have to, feed the baby or clean the house or, you know what I mean? Like do those sorts of things. But you're not waking up usually at 5 a.m. to like go work out and I mean, yes, a lot of entrepreneurs, I think Oprah was doing that and they were pushing that narrative, like Oprah's waking up early to work out. It's like the shift is we're not doing that anymore. We're going to be on our own schedules. We're connecting the moon cycle to our menstrual cycles. We are seeing, that's something that I think we also lost is that connection to nature and the cycles of rest, the natural human cycles, because now we're on machine cycles where productivity is constant. That's not natural. So a lot of things are shifting. I'm really excited, but I want to talk about your Kundalini journey. And really, I think that you're so unique for so many reasons, and I'll name a few. In your realm, first of all, let's just say yoga originated with brown people, whether it was in Africa or India. I think it originated in Africa and then developed in India, like really mastery happened there through a few key specific people, which you can talk more about. And then it was monetized in the US. In India, it's not monetized. It's like living, breathing. Yoga, everybody does it. You get up, you do your yoga in the morning before you go to work, whatever. You're not putting on your aloe or Lululemon and then going and looking cute and whatever. It's not monetized. Became monetized in the US, in the West. It's a whole big business. It's largely white women and it's a billion-dollar business. And I see you as a disruptor in that business, really an innovator, because you not only yoga, Kundalini is a type of yoga, but it's very, very niche and people don't know a lot about it. And you were on that scene a long time ago, like way before. I think even people were just doing hatha yoga. People are looking at me like, you've been doing yoga for 20 years? And I do yoga. I don't teach yoga. You know what I mean? Like you learned about it. You've been teaching it. You've studied it. And something is very, very, I would say even more of a closed space than the regular yoga that most people know about. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you got into that and how you discovered it and what led you to have such a passion for it and what you were doing before and like how your whole life shifted? Because you could have just studied it and like continued to do your day job or whatever. But you were like, I'm taking this. This is going to be a business and I'm going to teach this and spread this to the universe.
You know what I love? I love the divine timing of everything. And the fact that I'm sitting in this moment, the fact that we opened up with me expressing this week of having to take care of my granddaughter and how that disrupted my week flow and just everything I've been dealing with. And I've always said I'm a yogi because I was a mother. And my daughter, I was pregnant with my daughter when I went to my first yoga class.
Wow.
I was 8 months pregnant or 6 months pregnant. And I went into my first community yoga class and it was such an amazing class. It was hatha yoga. It changed me. It totally gave me so much medicine that I knew from that very moment, that was going to be the medicine of my life. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that I was going to be a teacher. I didn't know that this is something I would want to teach, but I knew that I needed that hatha practice that I did. And after that class, I started teaching myself yoga. And I didn't have the extra resources to go take classes. I was also pregnant, but as soon as I gave birth, I took a couple classes. I wasn't really turned on by the teachers or the classes, but I noticed at Integral Yoga, they had this sheet that had a simple sequence on it. I took that home and I started practicing it. And it was a 20-minute practice that became mine. And what I would do is every once in a while, I'd get a chance to go take a class here, a class like I went to early Jivamukti before Jivamukti was huge. And it was when it was in the East Village, when it was very small and cozy. I took classes there, but I wasn't regular. Like I just would grab a class when I could, and I would learn a new posture and then I would embed it into my practice. So I feel like my journey and my introduction to yoga was extremely organic. And that way of when I think of yoga in India being just a part of your life, just how you breathe, just how you walk, just how you live. That's how my practice became. I wasn't really a part of the scene of studying with a teacher, taking classes all the time, being a part of the whole scene. It really was my personal medicine. And I knew at that time that when I wasn't practicing, I was a mess. I was a mess. I couldn't hold it together. It was a lot. I was an actress. I was an aspiring actress. I was with a baby. I was living in the East Village. My ex-husband, but her dad at the time, he was a jazz musician. It was just like, we were just like these kids, trying to live a dream and doing it in our own authentic way. And I was like the only person amongst my friends who had a baby, except luckily I had some older sister friends that were all mothers. So I did have like this interesting situation where there were a group of, I would say 2 to 3 women that I was very close to that were about 10 years older than me. And they were all mothers and they were single moms. And so like there was some kind of guidance, even though in my friend group, my peers, I was the only one who had a baby. I was friends. All of us were artists. Nobody wanted to have a child. You know what I mean? Because that's like the scariest thing to do as an artist. As a creative, it's very, very scary to have a baby because you're like, what am I going to have to give up? So anyways, make a long story short, 4 years of that. And then all of a sudden I found a video, a VHS of Kundalini Yoga. Again, it wasn't through a teacher. It wasn't through a studio. It was this VHS. And it was Ravi Singh's video. And I always honor him because he was my first teacher because I did that video for a year. Just me in that video.
Wow.
And it was so nourishing on levels. I mean, when I tell you it changed my life within 2 weeks, it changed my life within 2 weeks. After 2 weeks of doing this, I knew I had to teach it. And this is something, again, when I did Hatha for 4 years, I never thought I want to teach this. I just knew it was for me. It was my personal practice. When I did Kundalini, immediately the type of shifting that went on in my body, my muscular structure, everything, like it shifted me on so many levels that I was like, I have to teach this. I felt like I had discovered the gold. I felt like I had found treasures. I felt like I had uncovered something that was like the world was waiting for. That's really how it felt. I felt like I had secrets that I needed everyone to like, I'd found the secret treasure, And I wanted everyone to feel what I was feeling. And that's often what happens when people are new to Kundalini. So much opens up in us that we want everyone else to feel it. And it took me years to understand that like, no, that's you. That's your practice, your experience. Not everyone is going to jump on board with you.
That's
not
true.
Everyone's ready. Not everyone wants to. I mean, it is an undertaking when you step over that threshold with Kundalini.
When did you move to make it into a business?
This is what's interesting about this practice and also what I love about Yogi Bhajan and the way that he packaged it, the way he curated it, the way he created the whole platform of Kundalini Yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan. Yogi Bhajan to me was a businessman first. It's kind of like the way that the teachings work. There's so much embedded in the work of when you develop yourself spiritually, naturally, you are going to be prosperous and abundant. That is the natural byproduct of being a meditator. That is a natural byproduct of living through your intuition. You are going to be prosperous and you are going to be abundant, and there's no reason you shouldn't be. And that's what I love about Yogi Bhajan's teachings. He really embedded this space of spirituality and prosperity in a way of that works to me in our capitalistic society. You know what I mean? Like, how do you bring the world of spirit where a lot of people think should be free, or a lot of people think it should just be available to you, and this world of capitalism where we have to work, we have to earn, we have the opportunity to grow ourselves financially, from 0 to a billion. It's like, how do we merge these spaces? And I really feel like that's part of the mastery of Yogi Bhajan. That's part of the mastery of Kundalini Yoga. And when you say, when did it become? It honestly was like kind of an arching progression, I would say. Do you know? Like, I remember when I first decided to be a teacher was after 2 weeks of practice, I wanted to do the teacher training. What did that mean? I didn't know. I did the training. And then I remember I was just like, oh, I'll do this on the side while I pursue my acting career. And I did that for probably like 4 years where I was just like teaching a little bit, but not like as my full time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say about 4 or 5 years into that, one day I just woke up and this is all I wanted to do. I no longer needed or cared or desired to be an actress anymore. I just wanted to teach Kundalini Yoga. It kind of took over. I think it's also that the healing process that I went through with my practice healed whatever I was receiving through the acting space. And then the overall mission was always to be able to change lives on a large scale through presence, through helping people learn how to relate to themselves and relate to others. And I realized, oh, Kundalini does that perfectly. I don't need to really be an actress anymore. Do you know what I mean? That purpose was served. So I would say about 5 years into teaching, all of a sudden it became like a real situation where I opened up my own studio. I was building a community. And again, I still wasn't even aware that I was entrepreneurial. Do you know what I mean? I was just doing what it takes to do that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to teach on that level, and I remember I was in Connecticut at the time, and in Connecticut, nobody was doing Kundalini. Everyone was doing vinyasa or power vinyasa or all these other types of yoga, but nobody was doing Kundalini. So no studio would hire me. So I was like, okay, if nobody's going to hire me, then I'm going to open my own studio.
That's how I feel like you're disruptive in the space, because it's really exceptional to move outside of a movement. And when the movement, I think of it like reverse migration. I once worked in New Jersey, and going against the flow, all the people coming into New York from New Jersey, Connecticut, and then I was going to New Jersey. It's a difficult movement. Pushing against the crowd, right? It's easier just to go in one direction. So you were really pushing, like no one was really doing Kundalini when you started. Even now, when you say Kundalini, people have a preconceived, which I think they mix up tantric and then automatically think something else. So there's a lot of mystery around it, and it remains so. And the people that know, but you do a lot of that teaching. And it is exceptional that you were a leader in the space. You're still a leader in the space. Like, it hasn't gotten to a level, but you have as well taken a lot of the new modalities available, the new platforms, and integrated and modernized how you run your business. And I'll just say subscription-based platforms, thank you, Netflix, have infiltrated pretty much everything. And there are going to be new updates and upgrades outside of that, because I think we're having subscription fatigue, to be quite honest. It's like everything is a subscription. It's like, how many packages can I keep track of? But that's a model that a lot of teachers are using, and it is really beneficial. So you had a studio in person, and then you switched to digital. So you're always innovating and really keeping a little ahead of what everybody else is doing. And do you want to speak a little bit about like how you stay inspired, and like you're always learning new things? Who's your inspiration for? Are you just watching the markets, or you have an internal guide that says, do this?
Okay. So number one, I'm not afraid of what the future is. I'm excited about the future. So that's my attitude in general. I'm very optimistic in that way, where like, even like, for instance, when I was in, Connecticut in my first studio and nobody would hire me, I was like, oh, okay, let's just open a studio. It was not even a blink. It was like, oh, we opened studios. And same thing now in my life. Like, there's very few studios I've taught at, partly because I've always been the type of person that's like, oh, I need a certain type of schedule. I'm going to create my own. Do you know what I mean? So even when I came, to Harlem and I was like, oh, I really don't want a commercial real estate space. What else can I do? And I said, oh, I'm going to talk to the board of my building. And we had a basement space that wasn't being occupied. And I was like, oh, I'm going to create a communal space so that I could teach there. And that's what I did. I created a community space. It was called Beloved Yogi Harlem. I grew that for 5 years. It was very successful. And then it had to dissolve. Then I moved to Brooklyn after teaching in the Hamptons for a little while just to have a break. And I moved to Brooklyn. I found a beautiful space. This is right before the pandemic. I found this gorgeous space. It was like a dream space for me to teach in. And it was a parlor floor of a brownstone. I was like, I wanted a live work space. Again, I didn't want a traditional brick and mortar, having to take out a loan. I just wanted to be able to freely teach and not have a lot of stress. And so with that parlor floor brownstone, I was like, oh, this is perfect. And then the pandemic happened. And then I was like, okay, 6 months into that, I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do.
Having the level of adaptation that you have, you stay flexible. You're always flexible with high spirit. And I attribute that to your practice as well, because easily people could, Kundalini isn't working. No one wants to join. I can't get teaching at a regular studio. What am I going to do? Let me go back to acting, or, oh no. And it was like, you just kept really forging ahead and like kept pushing and like real fire. And I want to say about Kundalini. So I discovered Kundalini through a friend years and years ago. She was very progressive. Her mother was a master teacher as well, healer, very, very, very prolific. And she would drag me to Jivamukti, and I went to all kinds of like healer, this, that, and the other. I'm a natural healer, but I was really resistant because I heal differently these days, more through conversation. And I was like, this is amazing, but also transformative. Like a couple classes of Kundalini versus regular yoga, walk down the street glowing, people heads swiveling. It was like, what's going on? This is very strange. And I would notice it was after class. Every time I got a lot of elevation, but things that needed to be cleared out were cleared out immediately. So it is not like a go to Hatha yoga and, I feel great. It's like, oh, this is going to leave your life. You're going to have this breakup because that person, it clears and unblocks things that maybe you're not ready for. So Kundalini is not for the weak. I'm going to say that. It will elevate you. It will really focus you. It is really dynamic. And I really love the practice. It's so incredible. Like, I don't want to go down a deep hole with, but I highly recommend whoever is listening to take a class, see how you feel. It's very different from the traditional vinyasa, hatha. Everything is about breathing, but they're more physically based. You're doing a different series of physical movements and mudras and mantras, and it is tapped into a collective consciousness. It's a little bit different than your regular yoga. So I will say that. But I really think that you say 6 months in, but someone sent me your Instagram live, and Instagram live was like, came on the scene like a little bit, maybe before pandemic, during, I don't even know, but you were like, boop, we're doing Instagram lives, and you were on there every day. And it wasn't 6 months in, it was maybe 3 months. And I'd met you before, but we hadn't really connected. And then I started watching your lives because I was just at home like everybody else. And you really mastered that. You jumped on that technology very quickly. And the people that did that really were able to grow their following on Instagram. So you're always taking advantage of the latest innovations. And I think that for women entrepreneurs in general, all of these technological innovations are going to be coming faster and faster and faster. And not all of them are going to stick, but it's like, try them out, move to the next one. This one works for my business. I'm going to keep this, and I'm going to try some more, add this, take away that. And I think that's where you really excel and how you've been able to grow, because you grew your following a lot in your community during that time frame, and you took advantage. So even though that space didn't work out, you pivoted very quickly, and that's really incredible.
Thank you. I love that you witnessed that whole period. And I want to say back to what we, started talking about, which is entrepreneurialism through the divine feminine space. I want to say one thing, and I'm not sure if this is divine feminine related, but everything to me is organic. My pivot came from, what do people need right now? It came from a space of really wanting to serve. It came not from a space of, I want to grow my following. It came from like, oh my God, people are freaking the fuck out. They need this. I need to be on Instagram right now. I need to be live. I need to do a daily meditation so that people can come back to themselves. So that to me, what is the motivation always behind everything that I'm doing is people need this. It's driven from a space of, I know what this does for me. I want to make this available for others. I want others to be able to feel what I feel. I know how, even like how I told you earlier, I've had 5 nervous breakdowns. I constantly think, oh my gosh, what are these other mothers dealing with? Now that I'm in this position, I'm like, what are these mothers dealing with? What are these families dealing with? What are the children? What are the fathers dealing with? What is everyone dealing with that don't have some type of regulation system available to them that doesn't cost anything if they don't want it to cost anything? Like, yes, taking my trainings, taking my workshops, joining my membership is a great way to study and to have a teacher and have a guide. But I want things for people who can't do any of those things. What can you do on your own? Because that's my foundation as a yogi. My foundation was not about paying for this, that, and the other. My foundation was, I needed this. I knew how to access it. I knew what to do, and I made it my practice. And so I feel like as a spiritual entrepreneur, it's very interesting. It's a different type of navigation. But again, Yogi Bhajan, to me, brilliance. His genius was understanding these times that we're living in, as far as the Aquarian age, as far as this new time of technology. He understood and he would do lectures on this all the time about how our society and our time, our issue is going to be technology. It's going to be that we have too much access to too much information, which is going to weaken our nervous system and weaken our glandular system and our electromagnetic field. So that's what our yoga strengthens. Kundalini Yoga is the yoga of the nervous system. It is the yoga of the glandular system and the electromagnetic field. So that's why when you do a class, your aura is so bright. God. And your glow is so on, and people are attracted to you. Everything gets attracted to you, good and bad. Do you know what I mean? But that's why also prosperity and abundance is such a big part of our practice. I used to kind of get annoyed with it. I used to always think, this is like, are we prostituting these teachings? Like, we're always talking about prosperity and Kundalini, always. And I used to always think, are we prostituting ourselves? Are we prostituting the teachings? Are we just trying to sell it? Because prosperity is easy to sell. You tell someone they're going to get prosperous, they're going to want to do it. Do you know what I mean? But the truth of the matter is, it is the natural byproduct to living an intuitive life and to becoming more intuitive and more aware. You're going to become more aware of your opportunities. You're going to become more aware of how and what you're doing to block or to attract. You're going to become more aware of how you can live in your highest expression and be your higher self and ultimately do what you came here to do, whether that's building $1 billion business or living a very simple life. I don't know. But the shift that I feel we're all in at this time where everything is merging and transcending, the idea of capitalism is going to change to not just being a capitalist, but how are we serving through capitalism? And I think that's going to be the healthy transition. Because my thing is, I'm not an anarchist. Like, the idea of dismantling a whole system just seems a little bit daunting to me. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't know if I want to dismantle a whole system, but how can we shift our objectives? How can we shift our perspective? How can we shift from more, me, I, to I want to generate this amount of business so that I can serve more people.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to be the steward of this amount of whatever it may be, land or finances or whatever, so that I can bring more services to humanity so that we can live in a higher expression and be in a more collective conscious upgrade of society. And this is how I like to think. This is what I think about all the time. I'm always thinking like, what is society going to look like if every child in every school was able to receive these basic teachings of yoga? Like, how would they be able to test differently? How would they grow into adults? What kind of innovation would that bring into our society when our nervous system is regulated, when we understand our emotional bodies, when we understand our subtle bodies, when we understand our chakras, when we understand this whole human experience from a space of integration, from a space of like this whole evolved inner and outer standing of who we are as humans on this planet. Like, this is what Kundalini to me is about, because Kundalini gives you the expand your awareness of who you are and what you're designed with and what you're working with.
A couple of things I want to touch on that you spoke about. Number one, before we forget, the name of your school is Temple 143.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll leave that at the end in the notes and how people can get in touch with you. And interestingly enough, I didn't realize this about Yogi Bhajan, but after I want you to share where you can find his teachings, specifically like the best sources. I don't know if I go to Google, if it's like the book of Yogi Bhajan, but how futurist he was. We are now Pluto in Aquarius. We're still in Pluto in Capricorn for the next 2 months until November. But then after that, for the next 15 years, Pluto is going to be in Aquarius. And we are going to be going through this transformation in community, technology, innovation. And for those who are historians and the people who believe in the lost cities, and when humanity was here before and didn't succeed, I would say, it was because they had too much access to technology and what they did with it, and it led to their destruction. And so we're here again, repeating the cycle, and we're getting to that stage where we have a lot of access to technology, which is great. Everything is faster. It's helping us innovate. It's going to change how we do everything, how we might not even need money anymore. We just everything. We might become telepathic, which is how these previous civilizations were, like all the things that you read about. Like, we're coming up to that now. And now we have an opportunity to integrate spirituality, like you said, do it differently, evolve so that it isn't only focused on technology, right? And I think that's where the evolution of humans, it's like, okay, now we're here again. How are we going to do it differently? Integrate and it be more beneficial to community and not focused on greed. And another thing, I love just what you said, and I always forget this, but I cannot stress enough how Kundalini, it is like when you take a bath every day, those of us that do that, it's a clearing and a cleansing, or however often you have clean your house or you clean your physical. A lot of people don't clear and cleanse their internal and spiritual. So you're just taking in whatever, toxic news, toxic information, emotions, and it's never cleared or processed. And Kundalini does that, clearing, unblocking, and processing. And so I had this like a aura photograph, and I actually can see people's auras. It's like not 24 hours a day, but I can see if I like focus and I can see the colors of people's auras, which is really interesting. In the photograph, they were like, your around your face is black. And they said, are you on computers all day? Because it's blocked and everything else was like bright and stuff, but like right here was dark. And I was like, I'm on the computer all day, technology. So they have these like EMF blocking for your phone, and they even have these like t-shirts and hats and all this stuff. So that's the physical, but the energetics of having too much technology, Kundalini helps that. Kundalini unblocks. There's a specific mudra mantra for it. So I highly recommend that people, you guys, technology is yes, your friend, but it can also not be the best thing. And we are now moving into this space. We're integrating spirituality and technology, and we're cleaning and clearing. And what are the tools for that clearing and cleaning in the same way, grounding, all of these things. And it goes back to, we've had these tools and now we're really needing them. We're needing them in a big way.
Absolutely. Your first question was about Yogi Bhajan. I do want to say this. Yogi Bhajan is a very controversial character. He's a master teacher of Kundalini Yoga. He is basically what my teachings are based off of his teachings. And that's why I like to honor his name. At the same time, he's very controversial. A lot of negative energy and negative information has come out about him right around the pandemic time. That happens a lot in spiritual community, believe it or not. You have all these leaders who do this amazing work and they bring forth all these vaults of powerful teachings. And then all of a sudden they go off the rails and
power.
Yeah. Power.
Men in power. What a surprise.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is what the feminine led. It's going to be the way power is utilized. Very, very different.
Well, it's interesting you say that. And I talk about power a lot in my classes on purpose. And that is, people have to understand power is not negative or positive. Power is neutral. And a lot of people want power and they think they're going to do the right thing with it once they get it. Imagine having your hands on electricity or a lightning bolt and being able to conduct it. That is what power essentially is. You have to become such a powerful conductor. And in order to conduct it in the most righteous way or in the most uplifting, in the most evolved way, you have to be constantly working on yourself in that way, because it is very easy for power to corrupt.
Mastery of self-empowerment must come first. And this is why another whole different episode that we won't go deep down, but people who have just been given power without obtaining that self-mastery is why we are in the situation that we're in today with the leadership.
But also, it's not just that. It's people who have maybe did the self-mastery work, but I'm telling you, power is such a seductive force. I just like to talk about this in a very real way and I don't think it's just the masculine that doesn't know how to deal with power. I think power is so powerful that it can corrupt us as women too. And I do feel like the future is going to look different and we are evolving as a whole. And I think that we're going to start understanding how to be more altruistic in that way of when you're living in your highest, what does that look like? What does a society look like when we're living in our highest? You know what I mean? It's like, I think that's where we're headed. But back to how can people find information? It's all over the internet. That's the beauty also about this practice is whatever you want, just plug it in. A Kriya for a calm heart or a Kriya for prosperity, and you will find all kinds of things. If you want to look up Yogi Bhajan's name, if you want to go to YouTube and look up Yogi Bhajan's videos, they're all there.
It's the best on like his business teachings.
There's not a lot on his business teachings.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, not many people would call him a businessman first. I say that because I know that he set up so many powerfully successful businesses. And he was such an incredible entrepreneur when he was alive. And he set up incredible nonprofits to protect the teachings. Mm-hmm. And he was just like a real powerful business person. And he understood the tapestry of capitalism and marketing and branding, which I think is really cool.
It's amazing.
And he would always say things like, You're here to be a great human, not to be an angel. If you were an angel, you would have wings. So just be the best human that you could be. And he would also always say things like, if you love materialism, just don't be attached to it. You love Rolls Royces, go get all the Rolls Royces you want. Just don't be attached to it. You love Persian rugs, go get them. Just don't be attached to it. You love fashion, you love diamonds, you love gems, you love all that stuff. Just don't be attached to it. And that was his like overall message about like capitalism and materialism. Just don't be attached. Enjoy it. Be in it. Be a part of it. It's a part of you. It's a part of the earth experience. Just don't be attached. And so that was, to me, part of why I think I fell in love with the teachings, was because it was permission. It wasn't like one or the other. It wasn't this or that. It was like, no, this is yours. This is your time. This is your earth. This is your experience. You get to have it. Go experience it. Just don't be attached to it. And I really loved that. I loved that message that he had.
If you have not had the opportunity to take a class with Siri Rishi Kaur, highly recommend. You teach online. You teach live at Rama in New York City. If you happen to be in New York City, I think you can check their schedule, but Mondays, evenings. And also you can get a membership and you do live classes in your membership, and you have retreats, and the retreats, I have to say, are amazing. There's so many offerings that you have. So I highly recommend that you check Siri Rishi at
temple143.com. And I do offer live classes in Brooklyn at Temple 143 as well. And I also have my favorite thing to offer, which is my teacher training, which is coming up.
Right.
The first one will start October 4th. And this is going to be our 6th teacher training.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's my 6th cohort of Kundalini priestesses that are being trained to share these teachings in the world.
And I teach also a workshop within the teacher training. I teach a branding identity business workshop, which is awesome because I always feel if I work with any client, my former identity was as a designer. I make everything look great. And I realized like when I left corporate, if you don't have marketing, if you don't have a way to promote, if you don't have visibility, and visibility wounds and blocks are a real thing. If you don't have that, no one will know you, no one will, which is also possibly why I'm doing this podcast now, to raise awareness, to also highlight other feminine-led entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs of color, people who are supporting women entrepreneurs. And it's very important knowing the business aspect of whatever you are wanting to bring forward. And the trend now is, like you said, focus on community. We're elevating each other. We're elevating in a new way, in a way that is evolved, supportive, abundant, spiritual, and based in innovation and technology.
And I want to say one key word that I will leave with everyone. I know it can be overused, but this to me is the key to the times we're living in. And that is authenticity. If you can tap into your authentic expression, your authentic way of communicating, your authentic way of being in the world, that is probably one of the most valuable resource on the planet at this time. Because we're living in a time where everything is being dismantled and there's a whole like new openness for new, whatever that means. Like there's so many new things are coming to the forefront. Your authenticity is the most powerful natural resource that you have. And if you cultivate that, and if you can harness that and figure out how to crystallize it into whatever it is you're doing at this time, then you are going to be ahead of all the curves. And that to me is, if there's a super sauce that I think I have, is that I trust, I play in it, I love it. I honor it, my authenticity. And I allow that to be my guiding light. That's my North Star, is what is authentic to me? What does a business look like to me? What does a spiritual teacher look like to me? Not to Yogi Bhajan, not to this person or that person. How do I want to articulate the teachings? How do I want to express what an entrepreneur is today? How do I feel and know what divine feminine is? And I trust in that. And that's why I am who I am and what I do. It's simply the word trust, my own authenticity, period. So thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. I also want to say you really have evolved and blended the teachings of Yogi Bhajan, his business, and who you are. So in your classes, you take your acting background. Doing a class with you it's a performance. It is highly energetic. It's uplifting. It's extremely feminine. You're in the goddess space energetically, and you transmute that to everyone in the audience, whoever's participating. Collectively, you bring in all of the other master teachers. There's a real special gift as well as your unique style. So for those of you who are not familiar, the traditional, when I was first introduced to the Kundalini, I would say community, it's almost a uniform of what people wear. It's Mormon-esque in its simplicity, and it's a white head wrap with sort of loose white garb. And you really evolved that in your personal style, which I think helps you stand out. So you took all of these things, and also the space is, I wouldn't say it's heavily male, but initially was heavily male in the teachings, and you've transmuted the teachings to apply to women and stretch and grew. And so that's what's also really genius about what you've done in the space, and open the space up to make women of color feel more comfortable in joining as well. I think I was the only Black person, and I think you were there, but like we were not connected. Not a lot of folks. And there are those people who don't feel comfortable if they don't see someone like themselves. Like I don't ever. I'm like, that's right, I'm here and deal with it. But that's really shifting. And so deep gratitude for opening the door for a lot of other people to experience these teachings, to make it safe, to make it inviting, to make it more feminine, to make it stylish, to make it innovative. I really, really thank you. And I look forward to learning more from you and really just spreading the word.
Elsa, I just say I'm so grateful. Thank you. Thank you for just being my reflection and my witness for all the years that we've known each other, which has not been a lot in numbers here, but I feel like I've known you for lifetimes. I feel like I would travel every lifetime with you. You are such an exquisite goddess in my life and just such a powerful priestess and entrepreneur. And I just am so grateful for the way that you create and the way that you elevate everything, that you bring everything that you bring your energy to. There's like an upliftment and just so much beauty comes through you. And I'm so grateful. I'm just grateful that you invited me on as your guest in this platform and this beautiful podcast. I can't wait to hear the 100th. I can't wait to hear. This is 100.
Episode 395. Thank you so much for being my guest today. The fact that I'm even doing a podcast is like I had to give myself permission. Like, because I know so many famous, highly talented. I worked in the professional world of publishing. And so you come across these people that are just levels and levels. And sometimes you have to say like, okay, I can do this too. You know what I mean? Because my training is in another area, but you realize like, this is just another like Instagram. It's a YouTube. Like if this is available to all of us to share information, to highlight people as we go forward, like you said, be authentic, share different aspects of yourself. And so I'm going to drop your information in the notes.
Okay.
And I hope everybody has the ability to check out at least one of your classes online or study the teachings. It's really transformational. And this has been Radiant Genius Podcast. And I look forward to seeing you guys all next week for another episode. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening, sending soothing calm to your nervous system. Hit subscribe and join me on this feminine-led entrepreneurial journey. The Radiant Genius Podcast, where we discuss all things brilliant.